Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is? All right, more of your calls and a ton of news coming up. But David Martosko is our guest spokesman for ConsumerFreedom.com. And I happened to, more than a decade ago, get to know somebody who had briefly worked for PETA, but actually at their corporate office in Norfolk, Virginia. And she said it was the craziest thing. They would pressure the employees to go. And I thought this person was kind of crazy at first. I mean, years later, I found out she was telling me the truth. I found it hard to believe. But I knew them and knew they weren't liars. And they said that PETA would pressure them to go get animals from the local shelter, claiming they were adopting them, to then take them back, and that they would, that she learned they were getting off on lethal injecting them. And she said, I'm here to help animals. I'm not here to be part of this, and left. Most people don't get a view in the inside trappings. It was also stuff like, close the doors. We've got hamburgers, double beef burgers, and folks, well, I'm on record saying that over a decade ago, and now it's become mainstream news the last few years. Their crazy behavior. So, David, you've been heading up one of the groups that's been exposing these freaks. Tell us about it.
Well, you set it up really very well, Alex. PETA, the people who tell us that we're not allowed to use or kill animals for any purpose, including medical research to cure cancer, turns out their views are so extreme that even they can't toe the line. We got some, through Freedom of Information Act requests in Virginia, we got hold of some state records that were filed by PETA's lawyers that show just what happens to all the animals that they take in supposedly for adoptive purposes. And it's pretty stunning. They wind up killing pretty much around 90% of all the animals they take in for adoption. Last year, 2008, PETA killed 2,124 pets. They found adoptive homes for exactly 7. This is the dirty little secret of the animal rights world, is that PETA kills animals. And we actually have all these records up for the public to look at a website called, perfectly enough, PETAkillsAnimals.com. And you can actually see the reports filed by the state of Virginia. PETA is based in Norfolk, so under Virginia law, they're considered a humane society. Well, and they have to report this to the state every year.
Well, it's just like they're always catching cops that are involved in child pornography investigations trying to fly across the country to meet with a 5-year-old. Statistically, it's the truancy officer on average, that's the highest rate of that. It's the same thing with PETA at the higher echelons. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say it. My wife was offered a lucrative book deal of $50,000 on the advance and turned it down because that's how I found out about it. She was my girlfriend. She was tracked down by a major publisher. It was actually, I'm not going to say the name of the publisher. I think in the letter it was a confidentiality thing. But the point is, and she said, no, I'm scared of him. I'm not going to do it. And I said, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And of course, I'd been dating her a few years, and I didn't hardly believe it when she was telling me because she just lived in Virginia. One of her friends that she worked out with said, hey, do you want to come over here and, get a job? And it was like a cult. She was only there a few months. It was mainly people outside of it never knew what happened. She happened to get right in to the inner circle, and she said it was completely insane. And, and she left, pretty fast. And then she was telling me that they would pressure them to get animals and then kill them. She would never do that. But it's a transhumanist, eugenicist death cult. Peter Singer, she said. No, seriously, Peter Singer.
No,
she said.
I love the language, the colorful language. You're increasing my vocabulary here.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not even joking. Is my point. Peter Singer is their patron saint, and he's the guy that says children are like mackerel. And I'm sure you've heard Obama administration officials have said you should even be able to kill babies after they're born. So this is a anti-life thing, period.
Correct.
But I mean, you're an expert on it too. I'm just kind of embarrassing in a way. She doesn't even like me even talking about it. But there it is. I mean, it's my wife. She has seen inside the pit.
I'm aware of that, and I would love to talk to her sometime and learn more about what she's seen.
Oh, you knew about that? I didn't know that. Okay, but anyways,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm aware of that, but that's okay. It's funny. The underbelly of the animal rights movement's got all kinds of nutty stuff. They've got arsonists. They've got people who have attempted murder. They've got folks beating up their targets with baseball bats. And for some reason, the public isn't all that surprised because we're used to extremists behaving extremely. But for whatever reason, this revelation that PETA actually kills animals has taken so much of the air out of their progress. By our calculations, this has cost them in excess of $14 million according to their direct fundraising receipts. And not only that, but their applications for college-age interns are down considerably. So suddenly the teenagers, which is sort of their feeder trough of new members and new employees, don't believe that PETA is as pure as the driven snow anymore. They see them as somehow compromised, which I think
it's more than that. I won't even say the stuff she told me. It's, rolling around on desk with Wendy's hamburgers, laughing insanely. These people are completely out of their minds.
That I'd have to see to believe. I can't tell you. I've talked to a few restaurateurs in Norfolk who tell me about some of the PETA employees who sneak away for chicken sandwiches at lunch. So I know that not everybody who works there is a true believer. But
she told me the story of one of their main spokesmen. He's a guy laughing and giggling. And she's like, what are you doing? She's a big vegetarian, at least was then. She now eats meat. Laughing and literally laughing, leaning back and eating a hamburger. That's the story.
Or was it Bruce Friedrich or Dan Matthews? Well,
you know what? I don't even remember. This is years.
I'd love to know.
Yeah,
no more.
Go ahead. But
regardless, I want to make sure everybody understands that while PETA is sort of the nutcase fringe of the animal rights world, they're by no means the biggest threat to everybody's freedoms. PETA is kind of a national joke. Everybody understands that they're just there for comic relief value. You might be surprised to learn that the Humane Society of the United States is actually the group that is a lot more likely to threaten our way of life. This is a group that's basically PETA with a nicer wristwatch and none of those naked interns that we like to look at so much.
Yes.
But it's got the same exact goals as PETA. They want to push animal use out of the mainstream of society, and they've got $200 million in the bank. They're a fabulously wealthy organization.
And this is a tool. This is a tool by the bioethicists, by the zero growthers, by the rewilders who want sustainability. They say they're going to use this to shut down farms, ranches, everything, and they'll use something that sounds reasonable, some sad monkey in a cage, but really it's everything. They want control.
You're right. At the end of the day, they want control over our diets because if you control food, it's fuel for humanity, and then you control basically the numbers of how many humans can live or die.
Well, sir,
this is the same thing with the environmental movement trying to keep genetically modified crops out of Africa. They would love very much to see a population in Africa plummet by any means necessary.
Well, David, you've done a lot of research on PETA, so instead of me talking at you, I just didn't know you were aware of some of the stuff I've talked about. Specifically, though, in your research, have you found what we found, that PETA, people like them, they're really just anti-human? We've heard all these announcements from the environmentalists. We got to cut our numbers and all this. At the end of the day, they just want to be able to outvote the rest of their fellow humans. So they say, we represent the bunny rabbits, and we're going to vote for them and take your ranch.
I think you're right. It's funny, if you watch Washington at all, you'll know that next Tuesday there's going to be a confirmation hearing for a guy named Cass Sunstein, who is President Obama's pick to run the regulatory office in the White House. He's going to be our regulatory czar, as they're calling him. He's a big animal rights lover. He wants to outlaw hunting and meat eating and biomedical research using animals and all this stuff. And I think, you're going to find suddenly that the animal rights nutties have a friend in the White House. And I think at the end of the day, you're right. It is all about controlling society. The animals are just a placeholder for any other tool that can be used to marginalize traditional American values and basic things like capitalism and free property.
Yeah, let me give you an inside scoop. And by the way, my wife has been on the cover of USA Today with PETA, so it's she really did work with them.
I believe you.
And no, I'm just telling the listeners. But but anyway, side issue. She's there because she immediately went right to the top in it, just by blind luck or whatever, or because she was smart and they liked her. But she was like, once she found out they were pressuring the lower level people to get animals and then they would lethally inject them there at the office, she said, what in the world is this? And they said, listen, these are invasive species. We want to kill all pet animals, all dogs, all cats.
You're right. You've ever seen the bumper sticker that says "Think globally and act locally"?
Yes.
PETA is acting locally. They're trying to take as many pets out of circulation as they can because their philosophy holds that if more and more Americans have pets in their households, then that's another sort of, as you say, an invasive species that's going to be drained on resources and protein and all this stuff. So they just want to eliminate them, and they're doing it in their own little corner of God's green earth.
Yeah, no. I've done the research. I made the film Endgame, and I'm just not joking with listeners. This is an energy cult. And if they can tax carbon, if they can tax all the meat first, which they're now passing, get that control in, the top echelons of this are totally cold-blooded. They don't believe any of it. It's T-bone steaks, finest wines, and it's all about control. It's all about dominating and feudalism and serfdom. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's one way of putting another thing that I've said quite a lot, which is that today's activists, especially those coming from the left, want to control society through its food, its labor, and its energy. And those are the three, you control those three things. There's nothing in society that can be done on its own without food, labor, or energy. So this is why you've got an environmental movement. This is why you've got organized labor. And this is why you've got, everybody from the mercury and fish scaremongers to the genetically modified food people who say it's going to give us a third glowing eyeball. They're out to control our food, our labor, and our energy resources. And that's how they're going to remake society. PETA is just one part of a much bigger picture that includes the Greenpeacers, the AFL-CIO, and you name it.